Sample size calculation for complex surveys involving clustering and stratification. Imagine this scenario. You are a survey statistician in Wakanda who has been tasked to calculate sample size for a nationally representative survey to assess the prevalence of vibranium fever in the country. There is, however, a small problem. You've never done a nationally representative survey before. All your previous studies were simple random surveys of rather small populations. Don't worry, we've got you covered. In the next few minutes, we'll show you the ropes, and you'll be a pro in no time. First question, do we have a complete list of all the people in Wakanda along with their email or address? If such a list existed, our lives would be so simple. We'd just perform a simple random sample. Alas, we do not have such a list in Wakanda, so we can't go that route. A wise man once said, "When the desirable is not available, the available must be desirable." The desirable is the list of people who live in the various places in Wakanda. The available is the list of the various places in Wakanda where people live. Let's zoom into Wakanda. It's organized into 5 states: Fahari, Jason, Kijani, Rafiki, and Tichito. Each state is divided into 100 counties, totaling 500 counties. Each county is further divided into 100 chiefdoms, making 50,000 chiefdoms in total. These geographic units are what we call clusters, which describe groups of people in the same space. Think of a cluster of grapes all hanging from the same vine. But just like not all grapes are perfect for consumption, not all population clusters are fit for sampling. Let's look at our 3 candidate clusters. 5 states, 500 counties, 50,000 chiefdoms. We can't use states because they are too broad to give us the diversity we need. Think of it like going to a restaurant with only 2 menu options, food and drinks. Naturally, you'd want more details. Similarly, sampling states is too broad. On the other extreme, chiefdoms are too granular. Imagine needing a sample of 1,000 people from 1,000 randomly selected chiefdoms across the country. We'd end up spending a lot of resources just to survey one person at a time. We need clusters that are not too big and not too small. They should be small enough to capture the population's diversity, but big enough to sample many people within the same cluster. For this reason, we choose counties. But there's one more thing. Rumor has it that vibranium fever may be related to living near the mines in the sparsely populated mountains. So, we need to ensure enough people from those areas participate. We use something called stratification. Think of stratification like sorting laundry into clean and dirty clothes. In Wakanda, we want to stratify into the highland and lowland areas. Each newly formed stratum or group is treated as its own population. The golden rule for stratification can be summed up as break and pay. This means once we break the population into strata, we must pay attention to sample from each one. So we have to be careful not to break the population into too many strata, because 2 strata means doubling the sample size, and 3 strata means tripling the sample size, and so forth. Coming back to Wakanda, what we now have is a stratified cluster sample. We first divide the population into 2 strata, highland and lowland. Then, within each stratum, we select clusters and sample people from them. So, back to the big question, how many people do we need? Let's head over to the Chi-Squares platform to figure this out. After logging in, we select cross-sectional surveys with percentages as outcomes since the study outcome is categorical. We want a 95% confidence level and enter a prevalence of 50% because, honestly, we have no idea what the actual prevalence is and prefer to play it safe. We use 50% because it's the most conservative estimate, guaranteeing the maximum possible sample size and thus ensuring we err on the side of caution. We leave the population size at the default of 1 million. Even though Wakanda has 23 million people, beyond a certain point, the population size doesn't affect the sample size. It's like a chef tasting soup. No matter how big the pot, the tasting spoon size stays the same. Next, we address the key difference between simple random surveys and complex surveys involving clustering. Here, I answer yes to the question about performing cluster sampling. This selection triggers 2 new fields to appear. The first is the design effect. Think of it like this: the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. When we sample clusters, people in the same cluster tend to be similar. So, while cluster sampling is efficient, it lacks the diversity of simple random sampling. The design effect is a number to account for this lack of diversity by including more people in the survey. For our survey, we enter a design effect of 1.5, since a value of 1 is what we would see in a simple random survey. Our survey has 2 strata, highlands and lowlands. So I enter a value of 2 in this next field. I then supply a margin of error of 5% and an anticipated response rate of 50% because Wakandians are very engaging people. My total sample size is 2305. I can click on Show Reference to see the formula and copy the citation if needed. Congratulations! You now know how to calculate sample size for complex surveys on the chi-squares platform.